Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today's video is going to be a fun one. In today's video, I'm going to be building a Master League team out of the 3 perfect IV Shadow Pokemon that I have on my account. I've been very lucky with getting perfect IV Shadow Pokemon. I have 3 in about 4,200 total Rocket Grunts done. They are Salamence, Ursaluna, and Tyranitar. So with 3 non-legendaries, I'm going to be at a massive team comp disadvantage in every single battle, so it goes without saying, do not try this team if you care about your elo. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's see if we can get some wins. Hopping into game number 1, Shadow Salamence versus Palkia. The fast move damage here is absurd. Palkia is going to go for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail does not KO, but the Dragon Breath after does, and that is tragic, as unfortunately that means that I do lose the fly that I had banked. I send in the perfect IV Shadow Ursaluna. Aqua Tail does massive damage. Opponent is going to pivot out and send in Zacian. Zacian going to be met with a Swift. Swift will add up. Zacian will commit the shield. I make it to Swift number 2, and this should put them at about half HP. The opponent double shields, and now Shadow Tyranitar hits the field of play. I'm really hoping they're on Play Rough Wild Charge, as Play Rough's pacing is slower than on Close Combat, and they are. They do go for the Play Rough. That is step 1 towards me potentially having an ability to win this endgame. I'm going to shield up Play Rough number 2, farm up to the back-to-back Brutal Swings, and fire off this energy before they can connect with a move. Brutal Swing will pick up the KO. What is that final Pokemon? It is Landorus. Opponent tries for a catch, and they do not get it. I'm farming up with the Tyranitar, and we get a catch of our own. A devastating catch of the Sandsear Storm onto the low HP Ursaluna. Back in comes Shadow Tyranitar, and it's time for revenge. Stone Edge KOs the Landorus, and that is a good game. We move to the next match, Shadow Salamence versus Yveltal. Yveltal will actually get outpaced to the first move here, as Fly 15 turns and Oblivion Wing is 16. So my plan here is just to grab a shield advantage and then go for a lot of farm with the Shadow Tyranitar, as of course unless they have Focus Blast, Yveltal is completely walled. In comes Tyranitar, they pivot out into Landorus. I'm going to respond with the Shadow Ursaluna. This is definitely where I wish that Ursaluna was running Ice Punch. Ursaluna has a truly insane amount of charge attacks that it can learn. Ursaluna going to go for the Swift. Swift, unfortunately debuffed, not going to be particularly threatening. Sandsear Storm number 2 is reached. This barely will not KO. Can I make it to the Swift? No, I cannot. I get there, but the Mudshot KOs. Tyranitar cannot get the farm down, and suddenly the game is rapidly tilting in a negative direction, as I'm going to be permanently debuffed for the rest of the game. In comes Duskmane. Duskmane will take super effective damage from Brutal Swing, but this is where that attack drop from Sandsear Storm really makes its presence felt. I'm going to have to make a bold play to win this game. I know Shield, it's a Dark Pulse, and we might be back in it with that bait call. I get to fire off the Brutal Swing. Their third Pokemon is the low health of Yveltal. They have to shield here. They're going to grab my final shield, and I'm going to have to manage my energy very carefully to win this game. They have very limited fast move pressure into the Tyranitar. There's the switch into Yveltal, and I'm going for a Brutal Swing and a farm down. Smackdowns pick up the knockout. In comes the Duskmane, and we get to the move. Against all odds, perma debuffed Shadow Tyranitar puts the team on his back to clutch an improbable win. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Salamence versus Zacian. Save switch into Ursaluna, hoping they're Play Rough Wild Charge, but throwing after 6 quick attacks tells me they are unfortunately on Close Combat. Close Combat is going to be shielded. In comes Yveltal, and oh my goodness, do I wish that I had led Tyranitar. His 2-shield Tyranitar does have the ability to just straight up beat Zacian, and it would also do amazingly into Yveltal. I'm able to get the shield back with the Ursaluna, as the threat of an Ice Punch is going to pressure a shield, but after they see Swift, they know they can no-shield the second one over farm and secure a knockout with Oblivion Wing. I'm going for farm on Tyranitar. If I'm going to have any chance to win this game, it's going to be on the back of Shadow Tyranitar. They're going to make it to an Oblivion Wing. That does not do a ton of damage, but in the back is Dialga. And this is a Pokemon that I just don't think this team can beat. Dialga, this team is triple weak. There's just nothing that I can realistically do here. I make the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing will get them pretty low, but it will not pick up the knockout. They will shield. I send in the Salamence. And oh my goodness, this is such a tough spot to be in. I shield up. That's going to force them out into the Zacian. Can I get to the fly? Unfortunately, a fly wouldn't KO from there. So they're going to make it to a wild charge. Wild charge does not KO, but now my fly will. But the issue again is going to be that Dialga. I can KO the Zacian after they lower their defense, but I just can't beat that Dialga. We've got a battle of shadows in the next match. Shadow Salamence versus Shadow Ho-Oh. Opponent safe switches into Zacian, and I'm going to respond with Shadow Ursaluna. Hoping they don't have close combat, but also, Ursaluna is my only bad matchup into Ho-Oh. So if I lose the Ursaluna, it's honestly not the end of the world. Unfortunately, close combat does come through. Shadow Ursaluna barely hanging on to grab a shield, as the opponent is going to get a farm down. I'm going to send in Salamence. I'm expecting that they should be on close combat wild charge. Typically, people are not going to run Zacian without wild charge most of the time, and I'm actually fully sacrificing the Salamence. If I'm winning this game, it's going to be on the back of Tyranitar once again. Tyranitar gets the smackdown farm down. Opponent sends in the Shadow Ho-Oh. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to fire off this Brutal Swing. This will allow me to farm down after. Opponent is going to be forced out. It's Tapu Bulu in the back. But up energy, Tyranitar can actually do well here. This is where Bullet Seed, being a terrible move in terms of damage, will really come back to bite my opponent. And now I get to fire off another Brutal Swing. Even if they call the bait here, which they do, they're still unable to win, because to win, they would need Ho-Oh to make a move, and Shadow Smackdown absolutely deletes it. We see same leads in the next match, but this opponent is running the regular Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is going to throw an Incinerate, safe switch into Dialga, and this is so bad. The good news is I'm very strong into Ho-Oh, but I have 0 Pokemon that can beat Dialga. I'm going to send in the Ursaluna. Ursaluna farming up quite a bit of energy, and I'm going to no shield here, hoping that it is going to be the Iron Head, and it is. So Iron Head will not be enough to pick up the knockout. I get to the high horsepower into Dialga. We see a double shield from my opponent. So they are going to exit up a lot of energy. I'm going to send in the Tyranitar, because if I bring in the Salamence is just getting farmed down. Speaking of farm down, I may honestly consider going for the full smackdown here. It's aggressive, but I need as much energy as I can possibly get. So I will commit the shield. Opponent is staying in. They're going to try and make another move, and they don't get there. I'm very low, but I have all the energy I could ever ask for. Opponent will be able to burn some energy by sending in the Ho-Oh. One smackdown on the Stone Edge means that Incinerate will not land. Ho-Oh is going to get one shot. In the back is Palkia, and this is going to be such a close game. Stone Edge is going to get them low. Is it going to be 1 Dragon Tail range? No, it's 2 Dragon Tail range, but they get the new mechanic. Oh, that is heartbreaking. The Dragon Tail registers, but unfortunately the Aqua Tail takes priority. That's an inconsistent mechanic, but unfortunately that is going to win the game for my opponent. We see Ho-Oh lead for the 3rd game in a row, which is great for us, but what is not great is a Zygarde safe switch. I farm up to the Outrage, baiting with the fly as Outrage would inflict massive damage, and they just completely disrespect it. I guess I shouldn't assume people know what Salamence counts are, because if I landed that Outrage, that would have absolutely crushed the Zygarde. Zygarde now met with Ursaluna, and they don't build up to the Outrage, which is a big surprise for me. Instead, they just go for a Crunch. Crunch not very threatening, so I will get a sick farm down with the Ursaluna, and I have so much energy loaded. The energy, unfortunately, doesn't go very far against Ho-Oh, but at this point, I'm basically just looking to try and stall the clock, and then let Tyranitar hit the field. So I'm always throwing 4 tackles and the Swift, maximizing as much energy and damage as I can. Clock's up, Tyranitar is instantly met with Palkia. Up a shield, this is very playable for Tyranitar. Palkia has the pacing advantage, but that's where having that shield is incredibly clutch. I can now look to connect with a Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing won't quite knock out yet, but it will get them very low, and that's going to pressure the final shield from my opponent. I do also have a Swift loaded on the Ursaluna, and my opponent, they do have a Brave Bird on the Ho-Oh, but they're going to need to throw the Brave Bird to KO the Tyranitar, because Tyranitar can survive and Incinerate here. That forces their hand. They're forced to debuff their defense by 3 stages, and then Ursaluna can take the win as I get to throw a couple tackles in the Swift. Their -3 defense means the Swift is able to knock out, and we're able to get the win. Terrible lead in the next match, and oh my goodness, it's a simultaneous switch out and that is heartbreakingly bad for me. Leading into Necrozma, they blind switched Yveltal, and when I blind switched the Ursaluna, I really would have preferred to have the Tyranitar on the Yveltal, but unfortunately, it is not to be. I get to make it to another Swift, but Yveltal is going to no-shield that one. Now I can send in Tyranitar. I really need Tyranitar to be able to kind of 1v3 here. Oblivion Wing is not going to do a lot, so I'm just hoping that they don't have fast move pressure into me. But there, unfortunately, is a Pokemon in the back that's going to lose me the game, and its name is Zarude. Zarude really making me wish that I had Fire Fang on my Salamence in this moment, as if I had Fire Fang, I would be in a terrific position. And maybe that's why the opponent switched out, is they assumed that I was on Fire Fang. But unfortunately for me, I was not on Fire Fang. And doubly unfortunately, I just don't have a way to win this game. They are on Iron Head. That is going to set up a farm down. And Tyranitar, I leave with the Brutal Swing, but they can just let this go and win the game with Zarude, because Zarude will be able to Vine Whip down before I'm able to double up. I'm going to stay in the game and try and play it out. I can get close to the double Brutal Swings, but not close enough. Shadow Salamence versus Ho-Oh. Saw a lot of Ho-Oh leads, but seeing Dialga is unfortunately, again, basically just game losing for me, unless things go very, very right. So Fly is going to be no-shielded. Okay, that honestly feels like a very solid step one, and they don't throw their energy. That to me is a pretty large error. They actually let me get the Swift, and I'm more than happy to take shield advantage here. I will always just let the Ursaluna go. The opponent is going to bait with the Iron Head. I would get the farm down, so that forces all of their energy, and now I can go for farm. I'm going to send in Tyranitar as I can get 2 Smackdowns. We'll have to see what they have in the back. They have Xerneas, and I'm actually going to beat a Dialga. This is truly an incredible day. They're going to go for a close combat and dip into the Ho-Oh, but look at the Smackdowns go. And to add a little insult to injury, let's go for the catch onto the Salamence, catching the Brave Bird. Their defense is now at -3. We get to farm all the way down. And Xerneas is about to get absolutely crushed under the weight of the back-to-back Stone Edge. I go for Stone Edge number 1. They're always going to no-shield because their only win con in the game is if I go for a bad bait. So we just full send and we take the win. Bad lead in the next match, leading into Zacian, the safe switch into Ursaluna. And my opponent is going to farm up to a Play Rough. Play Rough Wild Charge is definitely the moveset that I'd prefer to see with this team. Farming up quite a bit. Opponent now going to send out Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh, this is not where I want to see it, as Ho-Oh is actually able to absorb these Swifts and the tackles no problem and commit to massive farm. So I'm able to land back-to-back Swifts, but I will get farmed down, but I can snipe down with the Tyranitar, but I get 1 turn bring in, and they actually make it to a Sacred Fire. Oh, that is very unfortunate. I lose so much health, but back in comes the Zacian. And Zacian has no way of damaging me realistically unless they land a charge attack, because quick attack is going to be resisted. I'm going to go for the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing will come very close to knocking out here, and they shield, and that tells me Tyranitar has value. Is it going to be an Yveltal in the back? That's what I am expecting in this moment. They go for the Wild Charge in the back. That's not an Yveltal, but it is a Reshiram. Reshiram instantly met with the Brutal Swing. Opponent no shield, sending in the Salamence. Salamence gets the Dragon Tail down. In comes Zacian, but they're just too low. Zacian gets Dragon Tail down by a Salamence. And that is a good game. Shadow Salamence versus Dawn Wings. Dawn Wings will get to a Dark Pulse before I get the Fly, and I'm more than happy just to play zeros with the Salamence. I'm going to bank a move, safe switch into the Shadow Ursaluna, and that is going to bait out a Palkia. Baiting out Palkia is actually quite nice here. I go for the Swift. I'm able to grab a shield from my opponent, which is very clutch as well, and that is perfectly timed from my opponent. Oh my goodness. I decided to let this through because if I shield, then they could very easily no shield. I'm just going to go for massive farm on the Tyranitar. I'm thinking that Tyranitar farm plus the Fly that I have on the Salamence should put me in a pretty decent position. So I'm double shielding. I am fully committing at this point. I'm just going to go for as much energy as I possibly can. And there's my loose con right there, and its name is Melmetal. I have no way of beating this Melmetal. I can switch into the Salamence and go for the Fly, but a Fly plus Brutal Swing is just not going to be enough to knock out. I could beat a lot of things with a ton of Tyranitar energy and a fly on Salamence, but unfortunately Melmetal is not one of them, and I am going to concede the match. Hopping into the final match, one final Ho-Oh lead. Honestly, it felt like the vast majority of leads that I saw were Ho-Oh and Zacian. Of course, they're just very polarizing. Zacian, very, very bad for Salamence, and Ho-Oh, as long as you have a shield to hide behind, pretty solid. They're gonna save switch into Zygarde. I've learned my lesson. I'm not baiting. We land the outrage, and Zygarde gets absolutely rocked. Zygarde, I try and cap tie there when they make it to the outrage, but they actually don't throw their energy, which to me was a pretty big surprise. They let it go. They're gonna send in Waterfall Primarina, and this game is a win. Oh my goodness, Waterfall Primarina, I can actually win this because they're gonna try and Waterfall down, but this is the Shadow Hundo Ursaluna. It withstands the final Waterfall, getting to the Swift, forcing the final shield, and now I just have to bring in Salamence to absorb energy, and I can sweep this game with Tyranitar. They go for the Hydro Cannon bait, I send in Tyranitar, and I can just one shield farm down. They cannot get to a second Hydro, and that's what they need to win the game. Because their lead was that Ho-Oh, opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. As I mentioned at the start, I would not ever recommend using this team if you care about your elo. Getting these wins, I feel like I had to play out of my mind in a lot of the games, and the team was at a disadvantage in basically every single game. But honestly, the challenge was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed being at that much of a team comp disadvantage. I did end up losing elo overall with the team, which, considering what I was using, is fairly understandable. I did get more wins than I expected though. I was realistically expecting to get like one win every 2 or 3 sets, so the fact that I went better than that, I'm honestly pretty happy about. Let me know down in the comments. Check out your Team Go Rocket medal and let me know how many total rockets have you done lifetime in Pokemon Go, and let me know how many Shadow Hundos do you have, because my understanding from talking to people is my rate, which is 3 in about 4,200, is extremely good for getting the Shadow Hundos, and I'm curious to see where other people are at in terms of their Shadow Hundo luck. Also, not only have I been pretty lucky in the frequency of the Shadow Hundos, but also in the quality of the Shadow Hundos. All 3 are technically playable Mons in the Master Premier Cup. At the moment, none of the 3 are excessively strong in the open leagues, and that's part of what made putting all 3 together on a team quite difficult, because what I really like to do when I try and find something anti-meta is you try and find one anti-meta Pokemon, something that can provide something unique that battlers haven't seen before, throw them off their game a little bit, and then try and support it with strong meta options, so that way, even in your bad matchups, you have meta Pokemon to fall back on. But this team had nothing to fall back on, except maybe the Tyranitar. Tyranitar, Smackdown nerf, it apparently is unfazed, as there was a lot of games where it felt like the other 2 Pokemon didn't do much, and Tyranitar just kept putting the team on his back again and again and again. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.